Again, for the big game, they have a watch party going on. They got locations in Broussard, Mandeville, Baton Rouge, and Metairie. The Metairie one is the one we were at our last show. Great place to hang out, got some food, played some games in the Bay, all that stuff. So make sure you're going through there, not just this weekend, but anytime they got trivia nights, UFC, all that stuff. Really, really cool place to hang out. But this weekend in particular for the game, they have kids eat free, $2 canned beers, $25 unlimited draft beer, 2-for-1 wings, half off burgers, and 2-for-1, or I'm sorry, $2 touchdown shots. So make sure you're heading up there for the watch the game. Got a great show for you guys today, coming to you from the Ochsner Andrews Sports Medicine Institute podcast studio. And of course, if you're looking to buy a new car, there's only one person to buy a car from, and that is Matt Bowers. Swing by one of his dealerships, get your newer pre-owned car of your dreams, get the warranty, tell them NOF sent you, all that stuff. They will take care of you and get you the best price that you can find. Yeah, a lot of stuff to talk about today. Got the game this weekend, where are the Saints going, Hall of Fame stuff, all that, and much, much more. And joined now by my guy, Mike Triplett, for today's show. Our first topic is presented by PJ's Coffee, because we start every single day with PJ's, and you should too. Locations all over New Orleans. They're out in Mobile. They're everywhere. PJ's, get a coffee, get a croissant, whatever you do. Whatever you're fancy, they got you. So we heard from Mickey Loomis at the Senior Bowl, and he talked a little bit about draft strategy, not too much, because, you know, he's always a little bit guarded with that stuff. But there were a couple things that I think you can read between the lines on. And do you get any feel, or do you have any thoughts or any updated thoughts or any opinion, whatever, on how Tyler Shough, you think, approaches their approach, maybe not even just to the draft, but also to free agency?
Well, look, Mickey Loomis did go on with Todd McShay and get asked directly almost that question, like the I'm sure you're not going to tell us your draft board, but you know, since you have Tyler Shough, do your knees change? And he went on about a 3-minute answer about the importance of the offensive line. I don't think that means they're going to take an offensive lineman in round one because they've done that each of the last 2 years. He was pretty unapologetic about that. It does make me think. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but you know, we've said it all along. Maybe get that guard in free agency. But it's funny that he just, like, instead of playing coy, he was like, it's always the most important thing to us, and it's definitely the most important thing to us with Tyler Shough here. So I'll be pretty shocked if they don't address that in free agency, and you like to fill the must then so you can be open going into the draft. But yeah, I think reading between the lines and some of the things that we know and
Yeah, and I agree. I think the Saints should absolutely solidify that left guard position with a veteran. I think when you look at the average age of that offensive line is about 26 years of age, 25 years of age, which is relatively young. And something that Mickey Loomis made a good point about is that you sometimes you can get away with a quarterback that gets rid of the ball, you know, a lot faster, like you had with Drew. But with where Tyler Shough is at in his development, you're gonna have to have guys that can sustain blocks a little bit longer. And when you look at the age of that offensive line, listen, there's some tricks and tools of the trade that they probably haven't learned yet. A lot of offensive linemen don't really mature until late 20s, early 30s. They tend to kind of play well into their mid 30s, and they tend to play well because they've seen a lot of things. So when I look at this offensive line, I see the youth, and then it lowers even more when you lose Eric McCoy. He hasn't played a full season in the last 3 years. So that age drops significantly when McCoy goes out because he's the elder of that offensive line at 28. So you go from an average age of 26 to about 25 instantly, and Cesar Ruiz becomes the elder voice in that room when McCoy is, you know, in the tub or in the cold tub. So I think adding a veteran offensive lineman that is, if you have it, a second anchor or a general or a captain behind the leader of that offensive line. That way, if you do have something that happens to Eric McCoy, it's more stabilized because you do have that veteran presence that's still in that room, still on that field with those guys, still able to communicate. So there's a couple of names on there. You have the free agent left guard, Suamalo, I think, from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also tend to have a man crush on Joel Bitonio from the Cleveland Browns. Number of names you can get there in that 32, 33-year-old range. Definitely not, 3, 5 year starters, but you get them, 2 years. And then in the mid rounds of the draft, you still want to add an interior guard there, an interior offensive lineman there that can also compete with Ruiz should he continue to regress in this offense.
And that we've heard. And I think it does. I think it does bring running back, the hot topic in every mock draft right now. Obviously, receiver, possibly tight end, playmaker, anything that can help maximize this most important player they have on the team. I do think it's different than my anti-running back bias that we'll discuss a lot more, that we've discussed in the past. Is a lot more when you have a blank slate. When you have a blank slate, I would need to be convinced to start with a running back. Saints don't have a blank slate anymore. Now it's building around the quarterback, the left tackle, and the right tackle that you have in place, and I think that brings playmakers into play. I think it really does.
Real quick, I'm going to comment on that. Something that isn't being talked about that has slid under the radar that Mickey Loomis also said was the real fact that Tyler Shough has only played 9 games. So we can all jump ahead and feel like he's the guy right now for the future. But really, I think if you put that in context, Tyler Shough has earned the right to be the guy next year. But he could also end up being Will Levis and not having a good second year, which means that I don't think the focus needs to be on building around him more than it needs to be continuing to build a team that can support any young quarterback. And the reason I highlight that is because the real reason you lost a Brandon Cooks, right, and you lost a Rashid Shaheed is because they really didn't fit well with Tyler Shough. Cooks was brought in before they knew Carr was retiring. He was brought in as a deep end threat for Derek Carr. Shaheed worked very well with Derek Carr. Neither one of those guys tended to fit well with Shough. So now, if you think about it from that context, if you go along with saying you're going to build everything around Shough, well, you risk being in that same scenario in a year if Shough doesn't pan out, because now you've added talent that's supposed to support him, but he flames out. So then what happens if you have to get a quarterback next year? Now those pieces may or may not fit with that skill set of that quarterback. So I think you have to be really careful about saying, hey, we're going to build around a player that has only played 9 games and has yet to get through a full season and still has a lot to prove. That's not saying you don't build the team up. It's saying be careful about saying you're going to build the team around him. He's still an unknown to this point. A good unknown that we like, but still an unknown.
Anti-running back bias that might be an HR violation at a football company. I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna have to check the policy. Maybe we have to update that one. I know someone that's gonna hear that and is gonna be very happy to hear where this conversation goes from here. I thought, yeah. I mean, look, I stuck to that too, and I thought one of the more interesting things he said in that too, and I think it was in that interview or it was somewhere else, but Mickey talked about how at this point in their careers, the quarterback's young, so it's about getting the offensive line that gives your quarterback a little bit more time, and it allows him to have more time to process and to see the field and to go through things. And I think when you look at it that way, that just is, and it goes back to what we were saying the other maybe 2 shows ago when we were talking about team building, and they have a 5-year window here, and they use the 5 years to help Tyler. And then on the flip side of it, I think Drew Brees was a great example of that. We'll talk about him a little bit later in the Hall of Fame topic. Should be a Hall of Famer. Who knows what these guys are doing with the voting? But I thought I thought the one thing with Drew, and I think it's just so obvious. Of course, they continue to invest in the offensive line. Of course, they had great players on their offensive line. I'm pretty sure that there were guys that we thought were stars that wouldn't have been stars on another team because Drew Brees was there. Not the superstars. The
Yeah.
superstars were the superstars. The Terrans were the Terrans. The Ramcheks were the Ramcheks. But like, there were guys who are like, man, this center, what a low key kind of way to win the Jimmy Graham trade. And it's like, well, yeah, Drew's throwing the ball in 1.4 seconds. Like
Yeah.
there's no possibility for interior rush. And I think when you're seeing the field faster, and that's where your team goes. You get guys and your quarterback takes good and turns them into great. Right now, you need players to take your good quarterback and turn him into great. And I thought that was a very revealing thing in that interview. And I think it plays out into just all general aspects of this of what helps Tyler Shough the most. And yeah, I think it opens up the board to Jeremiah Love. And I think maybe in a coin flip of a two guys at the same spot, maybe you lean toward the offensive player that can help him a little bit more so than the other. I'm going to dig into what McShay said because he said teams often go defense after getting their franchise QB. I'd be interested to see the trends on that. I'm going to look into that myself a little bit moving forward. But yeah, I think it.
Listen, that is very important because that highlights continuing to build the team up versus saying, hey, we're going to focus on let's give this quarterback every possible thing he needs to succeed. I think that's something that should happen year 3. If Tyler comes out year 2 and elevates his play, even if it's week 8, let's say the Saints are 6-2, Shough is having a run at it. It's just before the trade deadline. Absolutely, you go in and you say, hey, how can we add some pieces here to further boost them along? But I think you should be absolutely careful about doing that from the start. The Saints should absolutely focus on defense because defense, no matter the individual players, defense is going to be a positive for whichever quarterback is starting for the Saints because there's a real situation where, listen, if you don't keep Tyler Shough upright next year, if Tyler Shough continues to take sacks at the rate he did last year, where if you extrapolate his sacks across an entire 17-game season, he would have been sacked 48 times. Okay? If that continues to be a problem in year 2, he's not going to make it through the entire season. And you very much may have to see Spencer Rattler again. So, what can be a very good friend to either quarterback? A defense that keeps them from playing very far from behind at any point in time.
It just kind of opens you up to more possibility. What helps your quarterback? You don't have to spend on there's just you don't have to worry about value as much too when you have cap space and that change. They just have a blank slate to really, I think, do best player available. And everybody says best player available. Nobody drafts best player available. I've been on a 10-year rant about this. It's always best player available, ... at a position of need or ... at a position of high value. I don't think the Saints have to do any of that.
Thank you. Me and Nick see eye to eye on this. There is no such thing as best player available. If you know anything about team building, if you had Peyton Manning, let's say year 8 Peyton Manning, but you went 2-11 the previous year, you ended up with the first pick in the draft, and that draft also had Andrew Luck as the number 1 quarterback, number 1 overall player. If you were picking best player available, you pick Andrew Luck, regardless of already having a quarterback. But you know why you wouldn't pick a quarterback? You know why you wouldn't pick Andrew Luck there? Because you already have Peyton Manning. So you know what you're going to do? You're going to pick best player available at a position where you actually need a player. All teams function in that way. There is no such thing as just picking the best player available regardless of who's there, which is why in that exact same interview with Todd McShay, Mickey Loomis said that the Saints will absolutely have preferences at the number 9 pick. They'll work to fill out their roster in such a way where they aren't forced to pick a particular player at a particular position, but they will absolutely have preferences of which position they like to add a player at, because they'll likely have a need and or a want at that position.
That they have so many needs, the board's wide open, and they don't have to worry about value because they aren't paying $50 million to a quarterback.
McShay might be right, but it was funny. I immediately started thinking in my mind, and the first thing I thought of was Drake May. They got him a left tackle, and then I thought Joe Burrow. They got him a receiver. So, like I'm curious
Me
what
too.
the trends are, but I think they sometimes give their quarterback the most important thing that he needs. If he doesn't have a left tackle, they get him a left tackle, and if he doesn't have a number one receiver, they get him a number one receiver. What's interesting with the Saints is they technically have a left tackle and a number one receiver. However you want to characterize Chris Olave and what a number one receiver is. But I do think it's wide open. I agree with you. Best player available doesn't always mean best player available, but I think running back's in play. I think safety is in play in this draft class because that might be the second, third best players in the entire draft. And I do. I think edge rusher is still in play for the Saints. I think this is about as close to it could be any one of 8 positions as we've ever been. But yeah, Ty goes to helping Tyler Shough. I totally agree.
We're ahead of the combine. We're ahead of free agents.
I do not think that safety is in play. And the reason I do not think a safety is in play is because the main issue with the secondary and with the defense in general, number one, the main issue in the secondary was that there were a lot of coverage lapses. Despite as well as the secondary played with regards to how many yards they allowed, etc., there were a lot of coverage lapses in the secondary because of the significant amount of youth. Sanker was a first year player. Your strong safety that you signed first year in the defense. Kool-Aid McKinstry, second year player. You had a fourth round pick at playing, high amounts, 400, 500 snaps. There was a lot of miscommunication in the secondary. Meanwhile, on the flip side, the most important issue was the Saints allowed the second longest time to throw for quarterbacks, which is around 2.98 seconds. If you saw that clip when we played Atlanta and an old quarterback had roughly 5 seconds to find Drake London in the end zone, a safety isn't helping you there. In fact, a safety is in the same situation as the safety on that play was. The quarterback held the ball for so long that you can't cover for that long. Not to mention, adding another young safety means adding more youth in the secondary. The Saints need to actually add some more age into the secondary because they play a significant amount of zone coverage. I fully expect Jonas Sanker to end up playing in the slot where Alante Taylor played last year. Why? Because Sanker was terrible moving in reverse last year. He looked solid to a degree as a safety, especially considering the situation that he was put in. But when you go back and look at the 35 or so touchdowns that were given up, and you go back and look at some of the mishaps in the secondary, Jonas Sanker was at the heartbeat of those mishaps, those miscommunications, because he wasn't reading the plays well. And when he came out of college, he wasn't a free safety. He was more of a box safety with a high tackle count. But he was forced into that free safety position after Blackman went down in the preseason. He is better used closer to the line of scrimmage, and one of his best skill sets is that of block destruction. But he also looked really good last year when he was asked to match coverage. He was a pretty good coverage safety. You put him in the slot, you get a little bit bigger there than you had with Alante Taylor, bigger safety, a little bit more impact. I fully expect Jonas Sanker to be moved in that slot role. And then you have Julian Blackman coming back who will also tag team with your second year, with 30-year-old safety that we have there. A little bit more experience on the back end, less coverage laps. I do not see Caleb Downs. I don't care how good he is. When you're team building, you have to think about how those positions fit and complement the other players on the team or in that position or in that secondary. Caleb Downs will go to another team. He will not be a Saint. Other positions, absolutely on the board. Running back, absolutely. Receiver, absolutely. Safety, no.
Agency. So anything we're saying right now, like is subject to change. But we have to analyze how the winds are blowing until they blow
Yeah.
another direction. And the current direction of the winds blowing, I think it's running back. I think it's Jeremiah Love, Caleb Downs, or best receiver. I think that's what I have circled right now. As I construct my cloud and I just try to forecast the weather. That's where I think it's going. It's just my best guess at it right now. And I'd be open to any of those. I think Caleb Downs is a killer. I think Jeremiah Love's a killer. I think Jordan Tyson's unbelievably talented. I think Carnell Tate's really well put together. And I think Mekhi Lemon is going to be a real difference maker. Any one of those 5 at 8, I'm cool with it. All right, moving on to the next one presented by Shawberry Insurance.
It's not